Well, we have another amazing podcast episode coming up. And if you haven't heard yet, I am doing a 5-part series with my friend Lindsay of She Makes Waves podcast. And we are on week 3 talking all about money. I know, you might get a little sweaty and nervous just thinking about it. First week we talked about boundaries, then last week we talked about worth, and this week we are talking about money. So don't worry if you haven't caught up in the last 2 episodes. Definitely go check them out. You're gonna love it, but you're gonna love this episode so much. Maybe just because we try to do an impromptu, improv thing that totally doesn't work. But besides the entertainment, you're going to get so much value out of this episode. So buckle up, friends, and get ready for an amazing episode all around money. I overthink, I overshare, and I overanalyze. So come explore with me as I chat about business, life, and relationships, all through the lens of an anxious creative.
Money, money, money.
Money. Oh, we didn't practice.
I love that. Okay, so you guessed it. This episode of the series is all about money.
Money.
No one likes to talk about it, but it's not as scary when you look at it, when you talk about it, and it can be very empowering when you understand it. And so I know, like in the last episode, we kind of started to talk about money and, and price increases and, I feel like it's coming at a good time in the series because once we know our worth and we've set some boundaries and it's like, okay, well, then we don't read into money as much. We don't put ourselves in people's wallets and decide what they're going to spend or what they're going to do. But I think until we get those other things under control, we're operating from this very emotional standpoint around it that I think we need to talk about.
So I'm curious, Lindsay, how was money viewed or talked about or seen growing up for you and your family?
Yeah, I mean, I watched my mom work really hard and I thought it'd be something that you always ended up having enough, but it was stressful. And it was like, one of my parents, I really couldn't rely on them. There'd be a lot of is it going to come through? Is it going to happen? Should I call 3 times this month and just see how they're doing? And then on that 4th call, be like, hey, have you gotten that check in the mail? Oh, it was a very delicate dance. And I think that actually, now that we're talking about it, is kind of how delicate I thought it needed to be at work.
Right. Yeah. Translated. Now, do you feel like you adopted the idea of like how you were saying, it was stressful, but there was always enough? Do you feel like you made that come to be in your life for a while of okay, so if money's got to be stressful, I'll make it stressful, but I'll always make sure there's just enough?
Yeah, because I feel like I've had a very solid clientele and a solid career. And, I know it's very popular to be like, I'm a 6-figure stylist, but I've been that for over a decade and it has felt very different at different times in my life. And so I think it's very interesting. And I think that a lot of us as hairstylists, we don't have a cash flow problem as much as we have a relationship issue to money.
I think you just hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, it's not a cash flow. I remember, so I always use this example of a person I know who growing up was always like, my family's broke, my family's broke, my family's broke. And then now in later on years, she still has the same narrative. And I remember hearing her and her family bought a house and she's like, yeah, but it's not as nice as these other ones. And then I found out later that they had saved over $100,000 to put as a down payment for their house. They paid for their car in cash and they didn't have the flashiest things, but I was like, you're actually way far ahead of most people with the flashy things. There are people out there with all the flashy things that are financing everything, that are swimming in debt. And your relationship with money is actually pretty good, but your mindset of thinking you're poor is really poor.
Yeah. And I think I love Gary Vaynerchuk, and he talks about how it'd be a totally different game if on our chests we had the number of what we had saved or what we actually owned, or that we'd be playing a very different game, because the game that we're playing is very society external, look at me in my Range Rover, this is me in front of my big house. For me personally, I feel like I've gotten to move into my dream house, but I'm not going to post a picture of me in front of it with the for sale sign. If you do that, that's totally fine. But for me, it's not authentic to me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, it's like, like when did it become cooler to like have a G-Wagon lease than it did to own your 2010 Subaru? Like, why is
Right.
it cool?
I don't even know what a G-Wagon is.
Mercedes.
Okay. Yeah. See, like I always tell people like I'm so not a cars person. I have a 2008 VW Golf and I freaking love it. And I've had it paid off for years.
Yeah, that like why isn't that like why aren't we admiring people that are living within their means? Why are we, and also like yeah, like there's so much more to meets the eye around money, and there's so much smoke and mirrors, and there's there's this book I love that's like called The Millionaire Next Door, and it talks about, it's like the oldest, best money book in the world, I think. And it talks about how what I love about it is it illustrates two people a lot of times. It'll be like the surgeon that never moved homes when they got their money eventually and started really making money. And then there's the surgeon who, same income of $750,000 a year, financed his kids through everything, got the house in the nicer neighborhood. They have the neighbor that's like, where are you guys going this summer? And it's like, Beth, where are we going this summer? And it's like, just the keeping up and and how the person that like just like lived their life and like got fulfillment from like walking their dog or whatever, shoots, trips their trigger, that person was worth 8 times more and had that much more wealth built. And I feel like as hairstylists, it needs to be less about like, this like what we bought for our salons or what we're doing. It needs to be more about like, are you ever going to be able to retire? Because that's the boss level stuff.
Yep. I remember when I first graduated high school, my parents are like, start saving for your retirement now. Like, you don't want to wait. Most people wait until it's in sight and then it's too late. And I feel like I started when I was 21 and I still felt like I was like, oh my gosh, it's too late. And my financial advisor is like, Dawn, you are leaps and bounds ahead of people your age. But like, I've consistently put money away since I was 21 for my retirement. Not always a lot, but a little.
Well, it's funny because I was fortunate enough to work at the first salon I worked at had a 401k, and I don't think I understood retirement. And I think what I said to myself was like, I didn't even know if everyone got to do that. I remember just thinking like, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that because like, I remember seeing how much was going in there and I thought like, well, I mean, I know it costs a lot to live and I don't even know if I didn't even get far enough down the road to even put myself to say like, is that something that I'm going to be able to do? I was just like, I'll just work, and, but I'm still going to take them up on this because there's a match here. And I think that we don't understand money. We don't understand like how money compounds, and we don't understand that like, like some people could be like behind the chair or as a teacher making $50,000 a year and have an awesome retirement, awesome life because they make good decisions versus the person that's made 4 times that. I don't think I understood that. I don't think I had any education around it. And I think it's like shocking.
And I think that's like the really interesting thing is like, I don't know what I was going to say. I had a really good point and then it just disappeared out of my brain. It was something about, oh my gosh. Wow. I think it was like, it's not about how much, it's not about how much money you make. It's how you spend it, because there are people who, this is what I was going to say. There are people who win the lottery and they'll win millions of dollars. And then within a few years, they'll be bankrupt again. And it's all about how you view money, your relationship to money, your mindset around it, and how you manage it. Would you say?
Yeah. And I feel like, you hear this said a lot, but if you think that you don't deserve to be making what you're making, you are going to sabotage yourself and you're going to spend it on other people or on things, or you're going to get it out. You're just going to get it out of your hands because you don't have the boundaries around money, because that's a whole nother thing. If you start making money and then there's people or family or there's things like that where people's expectations of you shift,
Yeah.
It's, oh, like, it's fun to go out to eat with you because like you take care of it, and and that stuff. And also like that's a boundary thing. And then you got the like, if you don't feel worthy of the money you're making, like you are going to do some tricky business. That's what I was meaning by I've had a very consistently successful career, but the way that I've viewed it and the way that my relationship to it has really evolved as I've grown up.
Mm-hmm. I remember like hitting 6 figures the first year I went out on my own and then thinking I had made it. And then I stayed stagnant kind of within reason for a while because thinking, well, I can't get any better than this. Like I can't grow it anymore. But I was having this conversation with someone recently about like, everybody wants more money. They think that's the answer. I just need more money. If I just had some more money. But if we can't, and I know I'm going to get a little woo-woo here, but if we can't show the universe that we can be responsible with what we've got, how can we ever be responsible with more?
Yeah, no, I feel like that's about kind of like you have to start walking the walk before you see it in your life. And I've never seen exception to that. Like I've never been like just like feeling bad for myself, or it's like you have to pick yourself up, you have to start making decisions, you have to start like living in alignment with the life you want, and then those things start to just trickle in. And never seen with it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. And like, I've been victim to it being like, oh, just, if I just made more, if I just made more. And it's like, well, no, if I just learn to live with what I've got and be responsible, then I know I can have the capacity to take on more.
Well, and here's one, like the one thinking that anytime you're going to go on a trip or you're going to do something, or it's like, oh, you want to, like I've done, like when we bought our condo, like a few years ago, like I remember being like, okay, I'm going to be aggressive here. I'm going to work extra and I'm going to, because then I could even put more down and more down. And it's like, did that little bit more down make your monthly payment that much less that you had to do that? Like why is your relation like, and I think we can get caught up because of the nature of our business. We're not getting a salary. We're not getting paid like the same no matter what. So you're kind of getting, it's almost for me, it was like a drug. Like I could get more and more and more. And it's like, and I felt like I was rewarded for more from like people and monetarily. But at the end of the day, it came at a cost. Like you've got this place to live that you're never at. And, you know, you have this person you supposedly live there with. But I mean, if you literally live your life with that mentality, it's scarcity, and you have a lot, and you could just be grateful, like you said, for what you have and be grateful you're able to buy this place. But it's like, no, because I think I had my pride and my ego were saying like, put down even more. Don't put down 20%, put down more. And it's like, it's a vicious dance.
Totally. And I remember, so after I went through my divorce, I bought a house on my own and I was so excited to be like, this is 100% me. Like I put the whole down payment down myself. I didn't have a cosigner, like it was mine. And I was really, really proud of the fact of like, it was like a very independent, cause I tend to be a codependent person. And it was a very independent thing that I did. And then the whole like kind of like panic of like, oh my gosh, this is my responsibility now. And oh, I have taxes to pay and I have bills to pay. But then also I didn't have the mentality of paying it down more. I had the mentality of like, oh, look, I can buy more clothes. And I spent my money on clothes. I had so many clothes. And I did this whole purge shortly after I moved to Calgary 6 years ago of like getting rid of all my clothes because I was trying to like become a new Dawn and I was a new identity and yada, yada, yada. But I just like watched all that money go down the drain when I like cleaned out my closet. And I was like, wow, I just found a way to throw away the money that I was making to keep myself in a similar place. And I think, dang, I could have paid down my mortgage a ton.
Well, and it was short-term like gratification, right? Like it felt put that new shirt on from Charlotte Russe, or I don't know if you have those there.
No. That reminds me of like Cleo. Do you have that store?
No, but I'm thinking they're probably similar.
They're like, you know, like it would my grandma would shop there.
Okay, this one's kind of like flowy tank tops, maybe a crystal belt. I don't know.
Yeah, not my style.
No, I mean, I don't know. I just thought it sounded funny. But yeah, like it's like, oh, I want to feel good in this moment where it's like, and also like that's kind of what I was doing by working extra. It's like it felt good to have my clients be like, oh, you're making me feel good. We're just trying to quick fix, make ourselves feel good. And like what actually feels good is to like have your future set up and to like be like living your life in a way that you don't have to worry about like working extra to make ends meet or you know?
And it really comes down to, I know for me, it was like the comparison thing. And it's like, just live within your means. Like when I first, so I owned my house. Well, the bank owned my house that I was paying back in Saskatchewan, and I loved it. It was like a century year old. It was 100 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it was like, had cute little dormers, and it was like the master bedroom was huge, and I had a walk-in closet, and like my bathroom was like French provincial themed. And like, I was very into like that whole style. Cause it was a representation of my independence. And I was really sad moving away from it, cause I loved my house. And I lived like 5 minutes from my salon. And when I packed everything up for like, a dream of a better life out here, we had to live in a rental, and I had never lived in, besides like renting apartments in my early 20s. I'd always owned a home. Like me and my ex-husband bought a house, and then I bought my own. So going back to a rental was like this weird self-worth thing for me, because I was brought up to be like, owning a home was like a status thing, I guess. I don't know. And so when I moved here and we had to rent, I was like embarrassed. And you can't really paint, and like it's, carpet you don't like, and linoleum you don't like, and the kitchen cupboards, and there was no even goal of changing it because it's not mine. And we stayed in that rental for 2.5 years. And then we moved to another rental that was like, more inner city, and it was really cost effective. So it helped us save. And we put away like a couple $1,000 a month into savings, which was, yeah. And I look back, and I'm like, I helped Nick pay off he went to school for 12 years, and I didn't pay off his loans for him, but I helped set up a plan, and he paid off all of his student loans in under 2 years. Cause I was like, we can live really inexpensively, and I don't love where I live, and it doesn't look bougie. And maybe people, that like pride and that ego and that embarrassment all played a factor. But then like 4 years after living in rentals, we were able to buy the home we have now, and we love it. And we were able to put a good amount of money down on it. And it's like, sometimes that like short-term pain for long-term gain is worth it.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point, because I feel like, I feel like your house does look really cool, or like, I think my house is really cool, but sometimes what doesn't get discussed is like how much work went into getting it, and how, or even salons. Like I see your salon looks awesome. My salon looks awesome, but like people don't see like the over a decade journey of the saving and the sacrifice and the no vacations and the this and the that. And I'm not saying like everyone should do it the way we did it, but I think that realizing like with Instagram, I think people coming out of school see what we have or see what we're doing, and they don't have the story of it, and they don't have the appreciation. And like, had you and I just gotten what we have, I don't think we would appreciate it either. And I think we probably squandered it, but like, it is not lost on me a single thing that I have because of how hard I've had to work to get it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that's maybe the disconnect is like, now with Instagram and Pinterest, we only see these beautiful salons, and I see people sabotaging their own careers over like, well, my walls aren't white, so I can't charge more. And it's like, as long as you have a clean atmosphere, it doesn't matter what the decor is.
Yeah, no, like even like in my course I'm working on, the location section, it's like it matters, but it doesn't.
Yeah. I always say, like, I have a downtown Calgary salon, but it's in an old hospital, and it looks real ugly from the outside. Like, it's not a bougie high. I didn't need walk-in traffic, so I could be off the beaten path. I'm really close to a main drag, but just off the beaten path. And that's helped me keep, reasonable rent.
That's me too. I'm not on a main drag either. I'm off of a main drag, and I'm like, oh, I love it. It's appointment only. Like I think you can get starry-eyed, right? Like, and I remember there's bigger spaces on the main drag around the corner, and I'm like, someday I'll have that. But then when I got right with myself, I don't even want that.
Yeah. Like, I don't need as much as like I crave that validation and I crave being seen. Like, I had a full clientele, and I wasn't planning on growing my business where I needed walk-ins. So I'm like, why would I go spend double per square foot in a high traffic area when I don't need the high traffic area?
But your ego, if you let that make the decision, would have had you somewhere that like now you're doing hair in a completely different capacity. You would have sabotaged your actual dream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wonder if and that's not saying someone that does have a salon in one of those locations is ego driven by any means. And like, different business models look differently. And like, as much as like, I wish I had a really cute storefront with windows that I could have a display in and like make, like, I love that. but I was like, but I don't need it. And to make the smart money, and I'm really glad that like, that's just something that was ingrained into me. It was like, make smart money decisions, be guided by your gut, but don't put yourself in a place that's going to compromise the ability to run your business. And work-life balance is so important to me, and a stress-free life is really important to me.
Yeah, I love that. So yeah, I think just really realizing like what actually adds value and joy to your life. Like you having a house that you love, and like now you're working, primarily at it. It's like that's a better use of your resources than having a salon that you don't spend your primary time at. And it's like, I think like I love what you said about like it's not wrong how anyone's doing it, but like I think we're looking around at everyone else and we're getting tripped up, as opposed to being like, what is Lindsay's version of success, Dawn's version of success? And like, I feel like I admire people's big locations. I admire that, but they're living their dream and I have to go live my own, and it's different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, that's the thing, is we don't know what someone else's goals are, and we don't know what someone else's financial situation is. So even though you may admire someone's beautiful, crystal clear, high-end salon, they could be swimming in debt. They could not also, right? But we just don't know. And so do what you can, live within your means, and like, be okay with waiting.
Oh, the wait is where you get like the appreciation from. Like, it's like you can't skip that. You can't skip that part.
No, totally. So all in all, Lindsay, as we wrap this episode up, like, what would you say is like the top 3 things that people should know about money?
I think people should know that if they start a retirement account or they get like a Fidelity account or anything like that, that if they have it, in the market, I'm not a financial advisor, but that the rule of 72 is something that I never knew, which is every 7.2 years on average, your money doubles. I think that's a staggering amount. And I think that that's something that like, if you were to read another book that I love is called The Latte Factor. If you were to read a couple books that are kind of more modern, The Millionaire Next Door and The Latte Factor would be my 2 books. So that would be like tip number 2. But tip number 1 is just like understanding that you put your money somewhere and you don't touch it, and you just have it invested, with a little bit of help from someone at Fidelity or whoever you trust, that your money actually grows. I think is just such a really important thing that we really should know. And then the third thing I would say is like, yeah, like maybe just stop looking at what everyone else has and figure out what it is that brings you joy, brings you fulfillment, brings you happiness. Because like you've heard every successful person say that getting what they thought would make them happy didn't. So you gotta, it's an inside job, and then let the money just help you facilitate that.
Absolutely. I love that. Even like when I see pictures of your salon, I'm like, oh, I want to redo mine. Right? Like we're always like, ooh, ooh, ooh. Have you read You're a Badass at Making Money?
I've read she's got another book I feel like I've read.
She has You Are a Badass, and then it's Jen Sincero. Yeah. And then You Are a Badass at Making Money goes really deep into our money mindsets. And it was so helpful for me, like asking like, because we shame people with extreme wealth. We can like, you can do well to a point, but like, don't tell me about your private jet. Like, how dare you? You should be feeding all the poor people in the world, when really like we are wealthy compared to many people. And why aren't we giving what we can?
Yeah, you're not going to give from a higher level. If you're not giving where you're at today, you're not going to suddenly come into more money and start to be a generous person. It doesn't work.
No.
And the thing I would say on piggyback on that would be that this idea that wealthy people aren't kind people, or like you're a good person up until a certain point, because like you're saying, there's also that stigma. Like some of the most generous, some of the most understated, some of the most amazing people I've ever met are the wealthiest. So that's actually just a limiting belief you have around money.
Yeah. I remember being at a fundraiser where this couple gave $50,000 to a charity. And then my initial thought was like, that's it. And then I was like, whoa, Don, like $50,000. And I'm going to be like, you should give more. But it's funny how we like project like, well, those people should be the ones giving, but like I'm struggling.
Right. Where it's like, you should be given the $50 you have of expense.
Yeah.
And if you think that like people started at 50,000, then you got it wrong, because they gave what they could from whatever level they were at. And Tony Robbins says the same thing. You can get everything in your whole life, and if giving is not a part of your growth strategy, you're screwed.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Well, this has been such a good episode. I can't wait for the next one. What are we talking about next week?
We're going to talk about communication.
Boom. I love it. You know, that's right up my alley.
So now that we got the money thing figured out, let's hit them with communicating.
There we go. Well, how do you feel about that episode? Holy moly. Well, that's just a taste. That's just part 3 of this 5-part series. So if you haven't gone and checked Lindsay out at She Makes Waves podcast on Instagram, do yourself a favor and go check her out. She is amazing. She makes me laugh until my gut hurts, but she's also one of the most genuine, caring people you will ever meet. So go check her out. And if you like this episode, make sure to tell your friends, your family, make sure to subscribe. And if you haven't caught it on YouTube yet, go check it out. You can go watch the episodes. You might be watching it right now, but if you aren't, watch the episodes on YouTube. All right, you can always check out more out about me, the Anxious Creative Podcast, and everything that I do helping you have a stress-free life and business, but earn 6 figures in the process at dawnbradley.com. All right, we'll see you next week for part 4. You're in for a treat, friend.